Thanks for tuning in to My Valley, His Victory, hosted by me, Mackenzie Smith, where I interview Christians who love the outdoors and have walked through valleys in their lives. In a world of highlight reels and surface-level relationships, we all have faced hardships. I believe our experiences can be encouraging to others if we have the courage to be vulnerable. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." My goal is to inspire you to come to the Creator through His creation and connect you with Christians who have been through similar experiences. I pray that this podcast encourages you if you are in a valley and pushes you to share how God has turned your past valley into His victory. Hey friends, I have a special announcement. I am hosting 2 The Wilderness and the Word events in 2025, July 23rd through 27th and August 13th through 17th. These are Christian women's retreats in Eureka, Montana, with Audrey from the Trail North. Our goal with these retreats is to bring together a group of women who want to worship the Creator in His creation. Over these 5 days, you'll meet like-minded women who want to grow in community, worship in the outdoors, and challenge themselves personally. I can't wait to hang out with you, so shoot me an email at myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com for more information or the registration link. Spots are filling up, so make sure and reserve yours today. On today's episode of My Valley, His Victory, we have Greg Johnson. Greg was adopted as a child and raised in the PNW. He has a background of more than 36 years of vocational youth ministry, mountain guiding, and a bit of rescue. Greg has also invested those years in leadership development, working with student leaders and corporate teams. He is currently the director of Stonewater, Youth Dynamics' largest adventure base and retreat facility near Leavenworth, Washington. Greg enjoys time with his wife, Ursula, along with their 4 grown kids and 2 spouses. He likes to work hard and play hard. He enjoys his church community and any time he can be outside adventuring. The mountains continue to play a pivotal role of his faith journey. Thanks so much for being with us today, Greg.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you just read your bio, but go ahead and share just a little bit more about yourself and who you are with our listeners.
There's a lot of years there to cover, but absolutely love the wilderness. My mom got us out there at a young age and just exposed us to so many different elements, from skiing to hiking, and I just so appreciate my upbringing in that environment, and it just stuck, and we continue to get our kids out and enjoy life as we know it in the Pacific Northwest. So love the Leavenworth village, except for the Bavarian town that we avoid on the weekends, as 10,000 people show up on that week, any typical weekend in the winter. But yeah, we love our community. It's a little town called Plain, about 30 minutes north of Leavenworth.
Okay, very cool. So you said you do a little bit of skiing, a little bit of hiking. Kind of what's your thing? Where do you really feel your heart come alive in the outdoors?
Yeah, probably telemark skiing at this point in my life. It's changed over the years from climbing and mountaineering and such. But telemark skiing as a kid, going out with my parents, we used to have pine tar parties. So the wood skis, they'd wax the skis down with this nasty black stuff and put wax on skis, and then go out for these wine tours on the weekend on cross-country skis. And so I'd follow them along. But it soon became pretty slow for a teenager or coming into being a teenager. And I said, I need some more speed. So I joined the ski team and raced for a while. And then I was up cross-country skiing, and these 2 ladies were telemark skiing, and I was just amazed. And they were 2 Canadian gals, and I asked them if they'd teach me, and they did. And, back then they were only 2 inches wide, I think, the skis. They were just skinny as all get out. But enjoyed learning and progressing in that, and just found my love in the backcountry and my love for telemark skiing.
Yeah. I know you said you've kind of done it all. Is there anything in the outdoors that you haven't done that you had, a desire to do at one point in your life?
Yeah, I'm still anxious to get on a kite board and out in the water. I've windsurfed in the past, but those kites just seem incredibly fabulous. I know they're quite dangerous with cords getting tangled around your neck, but hey.
Yeah. Have you jumped out of a plane? Because that sounds like something that you would do.
No, I've paraglided a couple times, Hawaii and Chamonix, and it's it's always a thrill. Of course, you have to go with somebody. When my wife and I were quite young, we went to Europe, and we went up to the booth because it looked fantastic to paraglide. And so we went up to the booth and said, we'd like 2 tickets. We want to go paragliding. And, in broken English and all this business, we realized, oh, you need a guide. We intended to just grab a sail and jump off a cliff, I don't know.
What? No, I wouldn't do that if I had never done it before. I need someone to go with me.
Yeah, thankfully we did.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So is she as just as in love with the outdoors and all the things as you, or kind of where does she draw the line of some of these big adventures?
Well, she was a librarian and raised in Arizona, and incredible bookworm. She absolutely loved to read. So it took years. We dated for 4 years before we actually got married. She learned more of the outdoors, and I learned to communicate better. And just a good, we're polar opposites, but she did move into a guiding position. She had gone out with the girls one week, and during that week, I'd be with boys out in the backcountry. She's climbed several volcanoes, and so she came into her own for sure. Beautiful telemark skier until the kids came, and then it was much more to juggle. So
yeah, definitely. That's fun. Polar opposites, but definitely can still share a little bit of the same hobbies and get involved. So that's always fun. So share with us a little bit about Stonewater and youth dynamics and kind of your journey there.
Back in '87, I came on as a hot-headed young adult looking for adventure, and I realized that I love Jesus and I love the woods, but how do those two come together? And my mentor and best man said, you really need to try this. It was called Reach Out Expeditions at the time, still part of Youth Dynamics, but the wilderness arm was called Reach Out Expeditions. And so I started going on with summer staff for several years, moved into a guiding role pretty quick with my rescue background and whatnot. And so did that for probably the first 14 years. I became expedition coordinator, ran all the mountaineering, rock climbing. I was a staffing manager, several different roles within the organization. But I finally kind of settled in on the 21-day at-risk wilderness trips. So we would take at-risk youth. We'd go out for 21 days, sharpen character, the drill. 7-day winter trips where, you'd get them up to the corner and you'd tell them there's a lodge just, a mile away, less than a mile away, and they would not believe you and flip you off and turn around and ski the other direction or throw their skis over the cliff, or many, 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 many stories. But that's where I found lots of good progression with students, lots of training, obviously, and that was my primary role for many years. And then I left for some corporate team development with Fortune 500 companies, and that's a whole nother part of my life. But Stonewater became available. It used to be an alpine boys ranch. It used to be a residential boys home. And we had prayed for years and years about having a facility that we could stretch our arms a little bit and bring students to us. We were in a residential home out on the coast. We had to drive 3 hours to do any adventure. And it became available, and a super significant God story that allowed us to acquire it, 158 acres. And they used to have horses, and we were like, we have not done horses ever. But the wrangler that worked with the boys back then said, this is a good program. Can we, come alongside? So we waited a few years just to get our bearings and ask God what he wanted for the facility. And at this point, we pretty much do everything under the sun. So we have managers, excellent, highly trained managers in the horse program, the rock program, the rafting program, and each of those managers take on those students and the technical side of training, as well as the resource allocation side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're one day to our 2 capstone programs is the LLT Life and Leadership Program. It's a 6-week for 16 to 18-year-olds. they live and breathe with our summer staff, come alongside, be discipled. All of our team takes turns just ministering to them. And then our ABS, our Adventure Bible School, and that's a 5-week in the spring and in the fall. So those are our two longest programs, but we have many 7 days and 5 days. And we kind of craft the program, if you will, to the objective of the group leader. So It's not necessarily an open enrollment where individuals sign up, except for the horse camps. That's more of the traditional individuals sign up, but we really value follow-up. We really value someone to take what they've learned in the wilderness, take it home with them, and continue to talk and be ministered by it.
Yeah. So is this mainly like a summer thing? Does it operate all year round?
Yeah, because Stonewater is so large, it does too. Because of the homes that were on site for those boys, we turned into retreat facilities. So one building sleeps 50, one sleeps 25, and our winter is packed every weekend from more or less the end of December to March. Groups love to come out. We have cross-country skis. We made an ice climbing wall. We have the infamous, I shouldn't say it, but we have raft bogganing. We blow up our retired rafts, put about 20, 30 people in that thing, and careen down the tube hill with them at night with tiki torches down each side. It's pretty fun. The word's getting out, though. We're getting folks just calling up and saying, we want to try that. Anyway, so all year round we do adventures. We're training in the spring. Probably the slowest time is in the fall, but that's strategic planning and rest time and so on.
Yeah. And there are different arms of youth dynamics, right? Like I believe I'm familiar with one in Boise. Is that right?
So Youth Dynamics started back in 1970 as a more or less a drop-in center, a place where kids can come to hang out together right by the high school. They'd have food, typically pizza, and then somebody to share the gospel. And that's how it started in Anacortes, and it grew to other communities. And there's about 15, 16 communities now from Moses Lake to Arlington, all in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So those kids, some of them are drop-in centers, some of them meet at a church. It just depends on the location. But those are what we call our YD kids, right? They get discipled every week by one of our greater staff. And then there's 4 adventure bases now, 2 in Idaho, a Salmon River base outside of Boise and Horseshoe Bend, Canby, Oregon, and then ours is the largest in Leavenworth. And they primarily run the extended overnight adventures. So we see those community kids come back year after year after year. And then typically some of those kids will actually step into the Life and Leadership program, the Adventure Bible School, because we don't want them to, as soon as they graduate high school, they still need to be discipled. And some go off to university, granted, but some even join us for summer staff roles later on as well.
Yeah. Okay. So it is, though, mostly youth, given the name Youth Dynamics. It is all programs for...
Yeah, 11 to 19 typically, but I'm a firm believer that our young adults, our summer team, our Adventure Bible School, and I don't know how many countless trips I've run with adults. We kind of have a 80-20 rule that we don't want to go over 20% of adult trips, solely adult trips. But we will for sure take adults into the mountains and on the water and so on. They're great trips.
Okay. Very cool. I love that. It's such a great resource for the youth and for just young people to get out and to be discipled. And I love that, you said you make sure that the people that are discipling them go home with them and that they're, followed up with, because I think a lot of times we can go to these summer camps or we can go to these events or, mission trips, you name it. And we have a really great experience, but then, there's kind of nothing after that in a lot of places.
Yeah, we don't want the candy bar high where they're just going to go back. And especially with adjudicated youth, some of those families are pretty messed up. And if there's not follow-up, then their parent, I literally have had parents send their kids to a long course, and then there was an issue on the course, and we had to get a hold of their parent, and their parents are in Hawaii. And, it was just an excuse to babysit their kid. And it's pretty unfortunate, but those things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I know you've been on, really your whole life has been being on adventure, it sounds like, and being out in the mountains and, recreating outdoors. Talk to us about how all of these things maybe play a role in your relationship with Christ. Take the work piece away from it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's where I'm closest to him. It's where I hear him, talk with him, praise him, commune with him. I think I learn about his provision, his power, being electrocuted, if you will, out there, being protected, just about his love. I mean, it's just tremendous. And what's I think anybody that goes out into the outdoors, whether they would say it or not, would have a connection with Christ because it's his creation. I think about some of the lessons, like running the river, and there's so many obstacles and temptations to go down, maybe this rapid or something. But if we're not able to read the river, how do we navigate that if we don't know how to read the river well? So a question we ask on the river is, who's your guide? Because obviously, if there was no guide in the boat, you would attempt it on your own, and you'd probably get yourself in trouble. But when we're reading the Word, it's similar to us reading the Word. When we're reading in the Word, it's life is hard to navigate, but that Word helps ground us and keep us. It's like reading the river. We kind of understand life a little better. Yeah. Or climbing is another one. We're tied in the rope, and that route, you could choose 5 different routes, 10 different routes, whatever that is. But you're tied into the rope. And some people choose not to be tied into a rope and want to do life solo. And you'll literally see, we'll have kids out there climbing, and there'll be a soloist that comes up beside these kids with no rope. But it's a fabulous time to talk to those students about, you could try life on your own. I tried life on my own, or rock climbing on my own, and I broke some ribs and punctured my lung, and it was not fun. But just so many analogies over and over and over again about connecting with Christ out there.
Yeah. No, those are helpful. I am I've been a passenger in a raft boat, but have never, had to guide or even would know the first thing about guiding a raft trip. And so that one does definitely, doesn't stick as hard as the climbing one, because it's like, I watch those movies, all the free solo and the people out there doing all these crazy things. And it's like, yeah, that's really cool, but there's a lot of risk involved with that. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of, and yeah, I just think that's good. Like being tied into the rope, it gives us at least some safety and gives us a route and all the things. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, orienteering, we use, the map and compass, and really emphasize, we give them a choice. Do you think it's more important to read the map, being able to read a map, or use the compass? And, you'll get both answers left and right. But if you correlate the map to the Word of God, if you can't read that map, if you can't understand where the river is and the ridges and gullies and so on, you're going to be pretty messed up out there. And likewise, walking in this world, if you don't know the Word of God and you're not studying the Word, that's what grounds us. That's what shows us direction. It's, He's our ultimate wisdom in all this.
Yeah. Amen. That's good. That's good. So can you share a story with us about a way in which maybe God has spoken to you or revealed himself to you in the outdoors?
Well, probably the biggest one is just coming to acknowledge him as my king in the outdoors. My adolescents were spent in quite a bit of chaos. Drugs, alcohol had taken hold. Long story short, I just had to get away from my friends. I needed to change. I don't even know how I got home some of the nights, and it was going downhill pretty fast. But I was raised to, enjoy the backcountry and appreciate the wilderness. So that's where I went to retreat. And so every weekend, every chance I had, I went to the woods to struggle, fight with God. And even though I didn't know what I was doing out there or what I was arguing about with him, but nonetheless, there was one time that I went up. There's a mountain called Mount Shuckson that's in the North Cascades, and I went out by myself and threw my tent up on this ridge and fell asleep. It was about 2 PM, just tired from hiking and the exhausting week. And I had this dream that I was above all the clouds, and the only thing sticking up were these big peaks sticking up above the clouds. And about 4 p.m., I woke up, and that's exactly how it was. Sun was kind of glistening off because it was on its way out, and just these summits of Glacier Peak and Baker and a few others sticking up. And I just stood on a rock and just cried out to the Lord and asked him to take my life there. And obviously, it wasn't easy, It doesn't just necessarily flip a switch and everything's, it doesn't say anywhere in Scripture that life's going to be gravy, but that was the day that I asked him into my life. So that's probably the most significant story of how God revealed himself to me in the outdoors. There's so many others.
Yeah. Did you have a basic understanding of the gospel at that point growing up, or? Yeah,
I was raised Lutheran, so, I knew all the right answers, but the hypocrisy that I saw, I'm like, this is a joke. This isn't for real. So I left that, but I did have a foundation for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious because I was like, if you had never heard, much about God, and then that was the moment, that's, really cool. But it's cool regardless. But, I was just curious what your background was before that.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, when a person's out there, faith background or not, there's something bigger than them, and they know it and they feel it, but it's hard to put your finger on it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard to know what that bigger thing is. I think that's the question that a lot of people ask is it's like, how do we know that it's that this is the right answer, And so I think a lot of people in the outdoors feel that they just don't know what to call it.
Yeah. I say, is this bad pizza or is God actually doing something here?
Yeah, bad pizza. I like that. So you live in Washington, a super beautiful place, and it sounds like, you've kind of always grown up in the outdoors and been able to do all these cool adventures and be in the mountains and be on the river and, all these things. What is a practical piece of advice that someone could use to start connecting with God on an everyday basis through creation without being in these super awesome places like the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, I hear you. I was just in Arizona going, I really want to climb that mountain, but I know I'm just going to get pricked by a prickly cactus. Well, the first thing, you can come on a trip with us. We'd love to show you the ropes and, give you some training and take you out. But, some practical ways, I think, is just to leave your phone. Just leave your phone. Turn it off and go outside. Maybe go on an easy hike, maybe if it's even in the park. And some really silly but practical things that you could do is just lay on your back. When I was soloing across the Cascades, I was getting anxious and the wind was blowing. I was by myself, and it was, I think, called Cougar Pass. That's not a pass that you just want to hang out in very long. But I was hanging out there overnight, but the wind was blowing through the aspen. We have some aspen on the east side of the slope where I live. I'm sure you do in Utah as well. But the leaves are roundish, and when the breeze blows, they slap together. And if you close your eyes, they literally sound like the biggest rock concert you've ever been to. It's just clapping. It's just this praise. And it says in Scripture, the trees will clap their hands. And I'll never forget that moment. But every time I walk in aspens now, and even other trees, I'll hear that rustling in the trees and close my eyes, and they're all giving praise to our Father. And that's just such a beautiful, beautiful picture. Yeah. Or laying on the ground and pretending you're an ant, and just all the intricacies of what's on the ground. We just tromp through the woods going, okay, I got a meeting in 2 hours and I'm just going to go for this walk because I have to, but just being able to stop and just enjoy the small things in life, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the biggest pieces is, and this is, going way up in the mountains, but, when I guide the volcanoes, you stand at base camp and literally they consume your every being. From 3/4 of your view is mountain, right? The same mountain, 3/4 around. And as the sun sets and dusk happens and then night happens, if you're on some of the closer to the urban area volcanoes, you'll start seeing the twinkling of the city. And, when you're in the city and you're driving back and forth, I don't care if it's Portland, Seattle, probably even Utah, and you got a special peak that you like to look at, usually the city is so all consuming that the mountain, you can kind of look up and put it in between your fingers. Oh, there's that mountain. I absolutely love that. Look at it. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, I better watch. Somebody just braked in front of me, right? The stuff of the world is so consuming that we only get a glimpse of that mountain. But when we're on the side of the mountain, it's huge. And when you look at that evening time when the twinkle of lights come up in the city, I can fit the city in my fingers. And the stuff of earth becomes small and the mountain becomes all consuming. And that's the way I look at it as far as God goes. When we're close to him, he is all consuming and the stuff of this world is small. And I absolutely cherish that metaphor, but I think it's so true that we get so caught up.
Yeah, for sure. Our perspective is everything. And it's like whatever you look at is what's going to be, filling that. And so, yeah, that's helpful. And I love the rustling of the leaves and, that it's like they're clapping and they're praising God. I've never heard that before. And now I'm not going to, I literally sit here and look out my window and see the leaves all summer long rustling in the wind. And I'm definitely going to look at them differently now. Right now they're all dead and they're on the ground, but they normally,
It's kind of like you can't see it now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. So switching gears a little bit into the title of this podcast, My Valley, His Victory, would love for you to share a valley or a season of wilderness that you experienced and just what God taught you or maybe prepared you for in that season.
That's not fair. I got a couple years on you.
I know. Hopefully you have some wisdom for us.
Well, I don't know. I learned the hard way.
Hey, me too. So,
well, I was adopted. That was a valley when I found out I was adopted. Huge, significant. I think that's one reason why I turned to alternative medicine, if you will. Falling asleep at the wheel, going 65 miles an hour over the pass, and coming out unscathed was a wilderness moment of everything being stripped away, almost getting killed by an avalanche or breaking of the ice above the waterfall before careening down 2,000 feet was a God moment and just a wilderness time for me and where I was with my family. But I think the biggest one is the recent kidney transplant. You think, oh, there's thousands of people that get transplants all the time. What's the big deal? But it kind of because I'm so active, it was a hard pill to swallow for me specifically. But yeah, I was just doing my thing, getting out when I can, and myself and another employee of Stonewater, we went out to ski the chutes of Mount Adams. It was kind of an annual thing for me and whoever I can grab to climb to the summit and then ski off the left side in the spring corn, beautiful spring day. So we're cruising along and at this point I've been having cramps and just lots of cramps, a little bit of fatigue, but I'm thinking, okay, I can do this. But he ended up waiting for me for a half hour at this stop and another half hour at that stop. And then I'm going up the head wall, fairly steep. I don't know what it is, maybe 40 degrees at best. But there's this large guy and this small little girl, and they're just passing me. And I think I'm working really hard, but people are just passing me. And I'm like, this is not normal. And then I get to the false summit and didn't want to continue. And that's not normal either. It was a beautiful sunny day, and he went ahead and continued to the top because I knew I had to ski down and then hike a quarter of the way down around the mountain to get back to the cart anyway. And so I'm scratching my head, a little concerned about why I was so fatigued. And 2 or 3 weeks later, another friend, we went up to Camp Muir on Mount Rainier once again to enjoy the spring corn. And likewise, he was waiting for me a lot. And at the camp at the top, I just was miserable. Huge cramps, couldn't move. Very unlike what I would normally experience. So I get back home, and my wife Ursula says, maybe we should have a massage therapist look at you. So she calls a friend of hers, and the gal kind of listens to the symptoms that I was having and says, no, I'm not going to work on them. You need to have them get looked at by the doctor. So I get looked at, get some blood work, and then, I don't know, that was a Thursday, and Saturday, I'm eating my breakfast on a Saturday, feeling just fine, and he calls and says, go to the emergency room. I'm like, what are you talking about? I feel fine. I'm just eating my breakfast. Leave me alone. So I go to the emergency room, and that's the end of the story. As far as the diagnosis anyway, they said I have kidney failure, and I think I was about 30% kidney function at that time. But as they say, once it gets down to 15, it just really drops fast. So I can't remember the time frame between then and. But what they did do is put me on dialysis. I think at around 15%. Spent close to 2 years on going into town 3 days a week to get hemodialysis done. And I think for the most part, I had a decent attitude. I'd take my computer there and I would work on some stuff and get quite a bit done. A bit frustrating, wondering when this all would pass, not even understanding what it means to go into full-on kidney failure and try to get a transplant. But as we researched more and heard more, they encouraged us to do home dialysis. So I would be at home, tied up all night, getting dialysis done. Very, very dark time in my life. Couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere necessarily, always tied to that. Yeah. So pretty humbled. They said you'd need a kidney transplant. So I'm like, well, how do you go about that? We were reading things like 10 years, they're waiting 10 years to get a cadaver kidney. And I'm like, 10 years? No, thank you. So I put out some emails, and I had about 10 people say, yeah, I'll give you my kidney. And I had to weed through that and go, I don't think I want your kidney. Depending on their lifestyle. But
can beggars be choosers in that moment?
yeah, a little bit. But so the kidney transplant center called and said, you're kind of crazy. We don't get like all these people. We can't test all these people. Like, choose one or two, would you, buddy? So anyway, they did test a couple folks, and what ended up happening is, and hence when I gave you my bio, I said I was adopted. Well, I found all my biological mother and then father and their families at age 31. And lo and behold, my sister Ginger, half-sister Ginger, she was a perfect match. And that was amazing. So we went down that long journey of testing to see if everything was a good fit, and there was complications over and over and over again. And because of COVID, we couldn't do it locally, and I ended up having to go to San Antonio a few times. But I went from 15% down to 4% during that time. So I'm barely functioning at this point. But the hardest part, I think, is my half sister Ginger is an amazing human being. She has 8 kids, 6 of which are adopted, 2 of which are disabled. One is on a feeding tube, and she's an advocate. She speaks around quite often about foster care. She is just has a huge heart for the foster care system and trying to change that, how dysfunctional it is. Anyway, the day before she came to San Antonio to give me a kidney, she was in Children's Hospital with one of the disabled kids. I'm just like, no, you can't do this. And she is so joyful. She says, of course I can. I want to. So she came down, gave me her kidney. Anyway, what a huge blessing. Yeah. So that was 2 years ago, almost today, that I had that kidney transplanted. Took another year to feel like I was in somewhat condition to go for longer walks and back to getting after it. So,
yeah, wow, good Ginger. She sounds like the human we all need to aspire to be.
No kidding. Yeah.
Gosh, just seems like just such a selfless, beautiful woman who's willing to do anything.
Well, what's funny is she's at her house and she's just busy all the time. I mean, she is. It's just a heavy load. I don't know how she does it personally, but she got the call, and I still have it on my phone, and she FaceTimed me or something, telling me how excited she was that she got, because there was a bit of complication there, but she finally got approved, and it was go time, and she was so ecstatic that she was able to give her kidney to me. Like, I want to give something up, I'm going to be happy about it. Not me, not usually. So anyway, bless her heart for sure.
Yeah. I know that you said that it happened when you were 31, but how did you find your family? Like, how was that introduced into the situation? Because if you wouldn't have known them, then chances are you wouldn't have this kidney. So, yeah, how did that happen?
That's not part of this podcast.
Okay, well, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
No, it's a fun story. So my adopted mom told me when I was 12, didn't know what to do with that. I think that's when I kind of made some poor choices. At 21, she gave me a little piece of paper that said, your father was a guitar player, and just very non-detailed, description of the biological side. And we were going to have kids, and we're like, maybe we should look into this a little further, because if there's any medical things in the, history.
Yeah.
So we started reading books, and they were, encouraging and discouraging. It'd be 1 year successful, 5 years, unsuccessful. And I was adopted with my sister, who she paid the big bucks to have, a professional go out and find them. And it ended up being a nasty can of worms. Horrible, horrible, horrible how that all transpired. And I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. But, it was still a tug on our hearts. We should probably do this. So we were going to do an ice climbing video for the deaf in Colorado Springs. So we worked at the Center for the Deaf in Colorado Springs for a bit, and we videoed the equipment and all that business. And then we went out to Ouray, Colorado. And anyway, great time. But just before I flew out that day, I took the one-page, what do you know? And I put the simple basic things that I did know and put it in the mailbox. 7 days later, I get home and push the voice recorder, and it says, "Hi, Greg, I have great news for you." And she had put in, the birth mom had put in her registry. What was it? 4 months? 4 months before that. And the reason why she waited is because her whole family was in the alcoholism rut, and things had changed there, and they had owned business and they were doing fine. So she decided it was a good time. But anyway, it just happened to be a match. And then that same night, I listened to the next voice recording and it said, "Hi, this is Susan from the registry," and just, excited to, hook you up kind of thing. But then I got a phone call and it was, "Hi, this is Susan or Suzanne. Um, and I'm looking for my biological son." And so I'm thinking in my head, oh, you need counsel. Yeah, because I'm looking for my biological mom, not even thinking that she was it, just oblivious to the point that she's actually circumnavigating the system and trying to call me directly. I said, "You're not supposed to be doing this." Anyway, I was super nervous and I said, "I can't talk to you. I got to go. Bye." And I literally left the house. I was a wreck. Anyway, I called back later and we made an appointment literally the next day, and I drove down to Kirkland. And anyway, and then she said, "I'm not going to tell you about your biological father until we have you for a year and get to know you." And then she told me about him, and yeah, brothers and new sisters. And it's been a huge blessing. All believers on my biological father's side. Anyway, just incredible.
Yeah. Wow. That's, I can't even imagine what that would be like. And just, having like a whole new family at the age of, I'm 30. And so that'd be like me getting a brand new family right now. And, still having your old family, and how do you navigate? Yeah, that's a lot, but it's really cool that you were able to find them and that you were able to connect with them and learn, probably answer some of your questions and settle some things in your heart. And obviously it led you to your sister, Ginger, who gave you your transplant. And so, wow, look at God go.
Oh, for sure. And just
because without this, and this happening, like, who knows what the outcome would have been.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the brothers on the biological mom's side and the brother and sister on the father's side. And just all of the relationships are so unique, but I still am in contact with each one of them. We love each other, and it's just a gas. But who would have known? I would have never known.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super special. So kind of going through this season of being sick, not feeling like yourself, and then having this diagnosis, going through a couple years of, just not even really having answers or probably getting better. And then, obviously your transplant. What is kind of the thing that kind of came out of this? Like what was the lesson maybe, or what was the thing that God just really spoke to you through this?
Well, the biggest one is, I guess, the skin of Christ. When I think about it, it always comes back to, wow, Ginger sacrificed her kidney for me. No strings attached, no complaints, just out of love for me. And as much as I want to honor her and follow her example, I can never repay her. God sent his son to die for me. It's in the flesh. I just got to see it and experience it for real. Now all I want to do is just seize the day and appreciate all that God has provided, whether it's outside with my kids. I was incredibly overtaken with joy, but also an urgency to capitalize, because when I was in the corporate world, working on that side, it consumed my life at 16 hours a day plus. And, I lost a lot of time with my family. And so it's just been very intentional to love on my family and spend as much time with my kids as I can. When I go out walking or skate skiing in the morning or whatever, I literally stop. And I'm just so thankful that I get to experience being alive, for starters, not to mention everything else. But there's in the midst of the despair, there's a song that my son-in-law sent me, and it's by Martin Smith. And I wrote it down just because I do want to share it on this because it was so instrumental in, because I literally wanted to pull the tubes out of me and say, I'm done with this. And it says, do not hide me from your presence. Pull me from these shadows. I need you. Beauty wrapped your arms around me. Sing your song of courage. I need you. Over the mountains, over the sea, here you come running, my lover, to me. Oh, through the valley, through the dark of night, here you come running to hold me till it's light. And so, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, man, I would play that song so loud. And, the sun would come up again, and we do it over and over again until we got out of this. So, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing those moments of utter despair, because I think that they happen to each of us in different ways. And, yours was your health was being attacked and your life was being attacked. And gosh, I've never had an experience where I just haven't, felt good, like, for such a long period of time. And yeah, I just can't imagine. And so
I think everybody has earthquake moments, though, every single person at some time in their life. And I mean, I didn't expect this to, not even in 1,000 years would I, think that this kidney thing would be a thing.
Yeah, well, and it's such a long, it was such a long journey too. This isn't something that, people have surgery and then they heal. This was, you went through 2 years of dialysis and then you had, surgery and then the healing process and so on and so forth. And so, this was an extended period of despair as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for sharing that. And what was the name of that song?
It's called Song of Solomon, actually, by Martin Smith.
I got the artist. I just didn't have the name. I want to check out the whole thing, and then I'll make sure to put it in the show notes for the listeners too, so that they can check it out. So, kind of looking back on your journey and going through, this season, what is a piece of encouragement or a word of advice that you would give to someone who's maybe experiencing something similar?
Yeah, that's a good question. It took a while, took a long while actually, but it's a season to appreciate. When I was going hard and I had to sit in that stupid dialysis chair down in the city for 3 hours or whatever it was, I came to the realization of it's okay. Just take advantage of the moment you have just to sit here. I tend to fill my life with stuff so much, agendas, adventures, you name it, but just to stop. So appreciate the season for what it has. I guess find the nuggets. They're few and far between. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit, but there's nuggets in there for us all that we can learn from. It's super hard. Sometimes that comes from other people, though. The encouragement, the encouraging word of someone that, or that song, that song was a nugget.
Yeah.
Calling his name, because, over and over again, I was like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get through this? And it had nothing to do with me. I just needed to lean fully on him.
Yeah.
Also, just being community. I think isolation kills in my mind, as I've seen it. As the kid sits downstairs and plays video games nonstop, and his mom has to give him a little jar so he can pee in it, so he can keep playing. Right? Like, that's so dysfunctional. But the
parents do that for their children.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing, actually. But to be in community where there's people that can keep you accountable, in my deepest despair, if nobody was there to encourage me, I'd still wallow in it until it was too late, right? So, because there are people around you that can encourage. Whether you want to take that encouragement or not is another story. And lastly, just the Lord will provide a way. He just will.
Yeah.
And it may not be what you think the way is, but he'll provide a way.
Yeah. Definitely. I like that you added that it may not be the way that we think, because I think so often that is the way that happens. And so we have to not have a lot of expectations and just be okay with a way and not one way.
That's right.
When someone goes through something like this, being a major health diagnosis, or just something that really is a really big valley like this, I do always like to ask the question of what are some ways that you were encouraged by other people, in that time? Like, if someone was listening that has a family member that is going through this, what are some of the best ways that they can support or encourage that person?
Well, it's so funny. I think this is humanity as well. I think the thing that sometimes folks or people want to do is, oh, I totally understand what you're going through. When I had this to happen to me, and they instantly pivoted on themselves. And so it does the other person no significant good to listen to somebody else with another ailment. They're stuck in their stuff and they just need encouragement. Somebody that says, "Tell me more. How can I support you? Can I get you anything?" Actual encouragement and support, and not, their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's helpful. That's helpful. I just know, so often we don't know what the best way to love someone in a situation is. And so I always like to ask the question from your perspective. So,
well, and even, surgeries, you could say, well, I had surgery too. Well, everybody handles all of those situations differently. And just being receptive to listening well to to what's not being said as well,
yeah.
significant. Because I just was with somebody this week, and no, I am just fine. I'm fine. And she was not fine. So how do you navigate that? Are you good with that answer? The only way to find out is to ask a little more probing questions. But
yeah, anyway. I know I'm convicted every time I read Job about, it says that his friends sat with him for like 7 days just in silence before they, said anything. And I'm like, we can't even wait 7 seconds. Like, and I know I've mentioned this on here before, but one thing that's been helpful for me with certain friends or with certain situations is asking them, like, do you need help or do you need to be heard? Yeah. Whenever friends are having problems, because I know I just automatically jump to help. And a lot of times, like, people aren't looking for help.
Yeah.
They just want to be heard. And I know I'm a problem solver by nature.
Yeah.
And so that has been a question that I've learned to ask people, because sometimes they don't want my help, and I'm actually doing harm through offering that. And so, yeah.
Well, and even I think touch is in that same vein. Some people express encouragement through touch, and some gladly accept it and desire it. Like, just have your hand on my shoulder. That's just going to be so comforting.
Yeah.
And other ones, it's just a complete repellent. What are you doing? And do not touch me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Greg, thank you so much for just being on here and for sharing your story and walking us through this season and sharing a little bit about youth dynamics and all of the things. I truly appreciate it. And shout out to Devin for for recommending you and connecting us. But yeah, tell us where we can find more about youth dynamics, or maybe if a listener wants to connect with you, where they can find you.
Yeah, well, probably the best place is on our website. It's a little confusing because there's a Youth Dynamics in Montana. We are not that Youth Dynamics. We are Youth Dynamics, and our website is Y as in Yankee, D as in Delta.org. So yd.org is Youth Dynamics in the Pacific Northwest website. And you'll see a plethora of different, drop downs and areas that we operate from. But I'm specifically at Stonewater, and there's a bio page and the whole bit. So that's the best place to find us. And we have the Instagram, Facebook, all those connections are found there too as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Greg, for being here and for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and have a great week.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of My Valley, His Victory. If you or someone you know are interested in being on this podcast, please email myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com.